deliberately seduce the billionaire CEO?
Are you the reason he lost 3 billion won and was suspended? I only delivered his food.
3 weeks after a simple food delivery, this woman found herself at the center of a scandal that cost a billionaire his power, his company, and almost everything he had built. But what the world didn't know was that it all started with one wrong door in the ring. Before we uncover how a simple food delivery changed both their lives forever, make sure you subscribe because you won't want to miss what happens next. She almost didn't take the order. Chalegeze stood under the narrow roof of a convenience store, rain bouncing off the pavement in every direction, her motorbike making that low, tired sound it made when the evening had gone on too long. The delivery app blinked on her cracked phone screen. One new order. Gangnam-gu, high-rise building, penthouse floor. She accepted it and drove into the rain. The city blurred past her in streaks of gold and grey. Seoul at night was beautiful in the way that things are beautiful when they don't belong to you. She had grown up in these streets, learned Korean in these schools, eaten from these markets, and still there were moments when the city felt like a house she lived in but hadn't fully been invited into. Her father used to say that belonging was not given, it was built, slowly, like a good song, one note at a time. She held that thought the way she held most things he left behind, carefully, close, and without letting anyone see. She was 28 years old and tired in a way that sleep didn't fix. The building appeared through the rain, glass and steel rising so high the top disappeared into cloud. A doorman stood at the entrance beneath a spotless awning, dry and unhurried, watching her pull up on a motorbike with a cracked side mirror. She unclipped her helmet, pulled the delivery bag from the back, walked toward the entrance. The security guard at the desk looked at her motorbike, then at her, then at the delivery bag, in that exact order. She watched him decide something about her before she had spoken a single word. It happened often enough that she had stopped being surprised by it, and not often enough that it stopped stinging. Delivery, she said in clean, precise Korean. He checked something on his screen, checked it again, asked for the order number. She gave it. He let her through slowly, the way people let you through when they want you to feel the slowness. The elevator smelled expensive. She didn't know how else to say it. She pressed the floor number on her screen, checked it twice, and when the doors opened, she walked down the corridor, counting door numbers under her breath. She found the one that matched, knocked. She was expecting an assistant, a housekeeper, a board executive who wouldn't look at her while signing the receipt. She was not expecting the man who opened the door. He was tall, simply dressed, a plain white shirt with the sleeves pushed up, reading glasses sitting on his forehead like he'd forgotten them there. He looked at her the way people look at something unexpected, not with judgment, just with genuine surprise, like she was a variable he hadn't calculated. She looked at her phone, looked at the door number, back at her phone, wrong floor. The heat of embarrassment moved up her neck. I'm so sorry, she said quickly. I pressed the wrong. I think I misread the. I'm sorry. She was already turning, already calculating the damage. A refused delivery meant absorbing the cost herself, which meant tonight's earnings just became complicated. Have you eaten tonight? She stopped walking, turned back slowly. He was still standing at the door, not closing it, not filling the space with small talk, just standing there with a kind of stillness that felt deliberate. The food is already here, he said simply, and I ordered too much. He wasn't performing generosity. He said it the way you state a fact. She stood in that corridor for 3 full seconds, making a decision that she would think about for a long time afterward. She was soaking wet. She was hungry. The soup from the bag was still warm and smelled like something her father used to make on cold evenings. She went inside. He heated the jjigae without asking if she wanted it warm, set 2 bowls on the kitchen counter without ceremony, sat across from her and ate without making her feel like a guest who needed entertaining. The rain hit the window, Seoul glittered below them. She ate and felt the warmth move through her chest and tried not to show how much she needed it. You speak Amharic, he said eventually. She looked up. When I'm stressed, I don't always notice. What did you say? Earlier at the door. She almost deflected. Something about the way he asked made her answer instead. I said today is too long for how much it paid. Something moved across his face. Not pity. Something quieter than pity and more valuable. I'm J1, he said. Tolegiz, she said. People call me Tole. He looked at her for a moment and then repeated the full name slowly, the way someone does when they understand that a name carries something. He got it slightly wrong. She corrected him without apology. He tried again. Closer. Again, she said. He said it again. She smiled. It came out before she could manage it. Real and sudden and unguarded, the kind of smile that lives deeper than the face. She hadn't smiled like that in 11 days. She counted later, lying on her back staring at the ceiling of her small bedroom while her mother slept in the next room. 11 days. She left 20 minutes after, walked to the elevator, pressed the button. The doors opened. She stepped in and the doors were almost closed when she remembered her scarf, her father's scarf, the green one with the worn edges that she had owned since she was 19. She went back. He opened the door before she knocked. He had the scarf in his hands, folded carefully with both hands, the way you fold something that belongs to someone else. She took it. Neither of them said anything. Neither of them moved for a moment. The elevator dinged softly down the hall. She left. He stood at the door until he couldn't hear anything anymore. And if you think that was just a polite evening between two strangers, stay with this story, because what grew from that night was something neither of them had room for and couldn't stop. The following Thursday, the app assigned her the same building. She told herself it was the algorithm. The Thursday after that, the same building again. By the third consecutive Thursday, she sat on her motorbike in the rain, outside the entrance, and looked at the order details for a long moment. Same restaurant, same time, same building. She went in anyway. He was at the door before she knocked. She pretended not to notice. He pretended he hadn't been listening for the elevator. They were both unconvincing, and neither of them addressed it. Those doorway conversations became the part of her week she protected without admitting she was protecting them. He talked about Seoul with the complicated love of someone who had built his life inside it and sometimes felt trapped by what he'd built. She told him about growing up here, about being the girl with the dark skin and the natural hair and the perfect Korean accent who still got asked where she was really from by people who meant it as curiosity and didn't understand it as erasure. He listened the way people listen when they are actually listening, not preparing their response, not filling silences, just receiving. It was unfamiliar enough that it made her uncomfortable at first. One Thursday evening she showed him a sketch. A dress she had drawn on a napkin during her lunch break at the cafe. Something structural and dramatic. African fabric patterns built into Korean silhouette. She hadn't planned to show anyone. It came out of her bag when she was reaching for her phone, and he saw it before she could put it back. He held it carefully, like it was actual material. "This looks expensive," he said, in the way that things look expensive when someone who understands beauty made them. She took it back. He asked to photograph it. She looked at him for a moment. Let him. That evening, she sat in the parking area outside her building and searched his name on her phone. She had seen a headline notification earlier in the week and had looked away from it quickly, the way you look away from something that might change what you know. She read it now. Shin Jae-won, Chief Executive of Shinko Holdings, photographs of boardrooms and press conferences, and an empire that included buildings she had delivered food to for 3 years without knowing they belonged to the same man. She sat in the cold for a long time. She thought about her father, who crossed an ocean with a second-hand suitcase, and a wife who trusted him and built a life from the ground up in a country that didn't speak his language. She thought about what he would say right now. She thought she knew. She also thought that knowing the right thing and doing it were two completely different kinds of courage. She locked her phone, pressed her feet flat against the ground, felt the ground hold her. Then she went inside and made dinner and didn't say a word to anyone about what she was feeling, which was everything. She stopped taking the Thursday orders the following week, requested route reassignments, didn't explain. Nari called on a Wednesday night, which meant she already knew something was wrong, because Nari only called on Wednesday nights when something was wrong. What happened? Nothing happened. Tole. Silence. It doesn't matter, Tole said. You only say it doesn't matter when it matters completely. She changed the subject. Nari let her. But the question sat between them like something left on a table, waiting. 3 days later, the cafe received a formal acquisition notice. Shinko Holdings. Tole read the document at the break room table while Mr. Huang sat across from her with the face of a man trying not to show fear. He had given her this job when she was 22 and exhausted, and had never once made her feel like her presence was a favor he was doing her. I don't know what to do, he said quietly. She folded the document, put it in her bag. I'll find out what we can do. She spent 4 evenings at the kitchen table after her mother fell asleep, reading community advocacy law, heritage business protections, development exemption filings. She printed everything, organized it, wrote a 3-page community impact statement that was precise and calm and, in the way that truthful things are, quietly devastating. Then she took a bus to Shinko Holdings. The reception desk was polished, and the woman behind it was polite in the specific way that means no. Tole was calm and specific. She had documentation. She had legal basis. She had a case. She moved through the first security point and the second. At the third, a young assistant appeared to manage her, which was fine. She was manageable. She was also not leaving. The elevator opened. Shin Jae-won walked out. He stopped. She watched him take in the scene, her face, the documents in her hands, the staff around her. His expression didn't perform anything. He just looked at her. She spoke first. I'm not here for anything personal. There's a cafe in the Mapo district. People's livelihoods are in that building. I have documentation. A pause. Come upstairs, he said. His office was large and organized and warmer than she expected. He sat across from her at the meeting table, not behind his desk, and went through every document she had brought. He read slowly, asked specific questions, read the impact statement fully, then went back and read one section a second time. Who wrote this? He asked. I did. He nodded, set it down, looked at her in a way that made her want to look away, and not look away at the same time. She told herself she was here for Mr. Huang. She told herself this was professional. She told herself a great many things on the bus ride over, and most of them were true, and none of them covered the full distance of what she was feeling. He told her he would review the acquisition plan. She thanked him, stood to leave. Tolegis, correctly. Fully. Every syllable exactly where she had taught him to place it. She stopped walking. I would like to call you, he said. If you'd allow it. She turned. You want to call me? Yes. After all of this? Especially after all of this. She looked at him for a long moment. He waited without adding anything, without filling the space, without performing patience. He was just patient. She wrote her number on the back of one of her documents, left it on the table, walked out. He looked at it for a very long time. What he didn't see was Director Hong Chae-rim standing at the glass partition of her office down the corridor, watching Tole walk to the elevator, phone already in hand. And what neither of them knew was that 2 floors above, in an office that officially no longer functioned as the chairman's but had never really stopped being his, a call was already connecting. She was here, Chae-rim said. He brought her upstairs personally. A pause. Then, send me everything. That night, something began moving, quiet and targeted and invisible, and Tole went home and made tea and sat beside her mother and felt, for the first time in a long time, like something good might be coming. She had no idea what was already on its way. The story broke on a Friday morning, and it broke the way things break when someone planned it carefully. Tole was in the cafe kitchen when Nari's message came. It said only, "Don't open the internet. Call me right now." She opened the internet. A photograph of her entering the Shinko building. Another from weeks earlier outside the high-rise, slightly blurred but recognizable. The headline was careful and surgical. It suggested calculation. It suggested a woman from difficult financial circumstances who had engineered proximity to one of Seoul's most powerful men. The comments filled within the hour. She read all of it. She didn't know why she read all of it. Every word landed exactly where it was designed to land, in the places she was most uncertain about herself, her visibility, her worthiness, her right to take up space in rooms that weren't built for her. She set her phone on the counter, walked to the back room, sat on an overturned crate, pressed both hands flat on her thighs, breathed slowly. Mr. Huang knocked 10 minutes later. His face was full of a gentle helplessness. "Take a few days," he said. "I'm not sending you away. I'm asking you to be safe." She nodded, picked up her bag, walked home. Her mother was awake, sitting by the window with a blanket across her lap, humming. The melody was Ethiopian and old, something Tole's father played on Sunday mornings before the world required anything from him. Mirai reached out without turning and held Tole's hand. She didn't ask questions, she just held on. Tole sat there and let herself be held and thought about how her mother, who was losing her memory in pieces, still always knew when her daughter needed her hand. That was the moment she cried, not from humiliation, from love. From the particular grief of being someone's whole world when the world is also falling apart. And across the city, Jaewon had been awake since 4 in the morning. He read the story at 5:47, sat at his desk without moving, then called Sung-ho and said 4 words. Find where this started. By 8, he was in his father's office without an appointment. He walked in and stood at the desk and asked, "Did you authorize the leak?" The chairman looked at him with arranged calm. He did not answer immediately. The silence had a shape. "She's not the problem," the chairman said finally. "The problem is your willingness to lose things over someone who cannot protect what you've built." "What am I willing to lose?" "The Yoon Capital Alliance, the board's confidence, your position." A pause. "Everything your grandfather started and your father grew, and you have spent 10 years proving you deserve." Jaewon said, "And if I'm willing to lose it?" The chairman's expression didn't change, but something behind it did. Something that on another man's face would have been fear. "He will not be willing," he said, "because I will call a vote of no confidence before you finish deciding, and she will still have nothing, and you will have given up your life's work for a story that the internet will forget in 2 weeks." He said it gently. That was the part that stayed. He always delivered the most destructive things in the gentlest voice. Jaewon left without signing anything and without saying anything else, and drove himself to his grandmother's building on the other side of the city. He climbed 3 flights of stairs, sat in her kitchen. She made tea without asking and set it down and sat across from him and looked at his face, the way she had been looking at his face since he was 12 years old and his mother stopped coming home. "You look like your father did," she said, "before he made the worst decision of his life." "I'm trying not to make the same one." His worst decision was choosing the company over your mother. She wrapped her hands around her own cup. He thought it was sacrifice. She called it abandonment. They were both telling the truth. He looked at the table. "What would you do?" She looked at him like the question was almost unnecessary. "You already know what you're going to do," she said. "You came here to be certain. Now you are." He hugged her carefully on the way out, drove back to Shinko, called the board meeting himself. Every senior director in the room, Cherim in the second seat, composed and watchful, Sung-ho at the side wall. The room had the tight, airless quality of people who knew something significant was arriving and were bracing for it. Jaewon stood at the head of the table. No slides, no documents. He told them the internal leak would be investigated and the source would face full consequences regardless of their position. He held Cherim's gaze when he said it. She didn't look away, neither did he. The room felt the current between them. He told them he would not sign any statement that framed an innocent person as a threat to institutional reputation. Then he said, "I am withdrawing Shinko's bid on the Mapo Cultural District Development Project." The room went completely still. One director spoke. "That is 3 billion won in projected pipeline profit." "I know." The Yun capital terms are contingent on I know. Your father will exercise his share block and I know. He let the silence settle. Then this company was built on one principle. We create value. We do not consume people to produce it. If that principle only holds when it is convenient, it was never a principle. It was decoration. He walked out. By evening, 2 investors had withdrawn formally. The board issued a 60-day suspension pending restructuring review. His father did not call. The silence from that direction was the loudest thing in his apartment that night. He sat without turning the lights on. The city below him was full and bright and indifferent. He picked up his phone, looked at the photograph of the napkin sketch, the dress with the African pattern built into the Korean silhouette, the thing she had made on a lunch break and hadn't planned to show anyone. He did not regret a single thing he had done today. He hoped she knew that. He hoped somehow she could feel it across the city. Comment and tell us, do you think Tole will forgive him for everything his name brought into her life? Because what she did next surprised everyone, including Nari. Nari filmed her that evening. It wasn't planned. Tole was sitting in her living room in a simple top, natural hair loose around her face, and she started talking, quietly and without performance, and Nari held up her phone and didn't say a word. No ring light, no preparation. Tole looked at the camera and spoke in Korean. She said she had walked since she was 17. She said she loved this city because it raised her and she believed it was capable of more than its worst moments. She said her name, fully, Tolegese, like it was the most ordinary and necessary thing in the world, because it was. 3 minutes and 40 seconds. Nari posted it at 11 at night. By morning, 4 million views. The comments were not all kind, but a wave rose. People who recognized the particular dignity of standing clearly in a moment designed to make you disappear. Delivery workers, women who looked like her, Korean people who had grown up beside someone like her and chose, finally, to say so publicly. She read some of those comments carefully. They felt different from the others. They felt like hands reaching through a screen. Jaewon watched the video 12 times. He counted. He watched the moment she said her name. He watched the way she didn't brace before she said it, the way she simply said it, like an answer to a question the world kept asking wrong. He went to the cafe on a Tuesday. Plain clothes. No staff. He sat at the corner table and ordered from the menu and waited with the particular patience of a man who has made his decision and is now simply present inside it. She came through the kitchen door with a tray and saw him. Everything stopped except the tray, which stayed level because her hands were trained for difficult moments. He looked at her. I didn't come to explain. I came so you'd know that everything I lost, I chose to lose, and I would choose it again tomorrow. Mr. Huang was watching from behind the counter. He looked at the ceiling and then at his shoes and began very deliberately wiping a counter that was already clean. Tole set the tray on the nearest table, walked to his table, sat down across from him without being asked. You withdrew the Mapo project, she said. Yes. The board suspended you. 60 days. Your father hasn't called, he said, which is its own kind of answer. She looked at him. He looked back. No performance, no management, just 2 people in a small cafe with the smell of soup around them and a city outside that had been very loud about both of them recently. Why? She asked, simply and directly. Because the cafe matters, he said. Because you were right. Because I have spent my entire life making choices that looked responsible and felt like nothing. He paused. That one felt like something real. Her eyes were very bright. She didn't look away, and she didn't speak for a moment, and in that silence, something settled between them that didn't need words to be understood. My mother remembered you, she said finally. She doesn't hold on to most things anymore, but she remembered you. The thing that crossed his face then was something she had only seen once before, at a door, in the rain. When he had her scarf folded in both hands, the investigation concluded that week. The leak traced back to communications from Chae-rim's office to a media contact inside the chairman's personal network, documented and precise. Chae-rim was removed, not loudly, The way powerful institutions remove people who became liabilities without ceremony, like a paragraph deleted from a document. The chairman received the report, said nothing publicly, but on a Sunday afternoon 3 weeks later, he appeared at the grandmother's building without calling ahead. He sat in the small kitchen, ate food he hadn't ordered, stayed longer than his driver anticipated. He did not apologize, but he stayed. And for a man like Shin Dae-jung, staying in a humble room eating simple food without complaint was the closest thing to sorry his architecture allowed. Jaewon watched his father and thought, this is not enough, and it is something, and both of those things are true, and I can hold both of them. The board reinstated him in the 6th week. Director Baek, the oldest member, the one who had known his mother, had been quietly gathering the votes. 7-5, close and real and earned. He returned to Shinko with modified oversight and a board that now understood something fundamental about the man they were dealing with. He was not a continuation of his father, he was a different kind of leader entirely. Tole's mother began seeing a specialist in November. Jae-won had researched the best neurological care in Seoul and brought the information to their apartment one evening and sat across from both women and asked, not assumed, not arranged, asked if they would like to consider it. He explained everything clearly. He answered Mireille's questions, looking directly at her, not at Tole, treating her as someone whose mind still mattered, which it did. Mireille listened with the careful attention she reserved for things that were important. Then she said yes in Korean, then again, softly, in Amharic. Tole looked at the table for a long moment. When she looked up, her eyes were dry and her face was steady, and only someone who knew her very well could see what was happening underneath. Nari, who was sitting in the corner pretending to look at her phone, knew. She looked at the ceiling and pressed her lips together and said nothing. The sketchbook came back in November, also. Not as a decision, not as a moment. Tole simply sat at the kitchen table one evening after her shift and opened it and drew for 40 minutes without stopping. Jae-won was at the other end of the table with a book, and he didn't watch her work. He was simply there, the way people are there when they understand that presence is different from performance. She looked up once. He was reading. The lamp between them was warm. She looked back down and kept drawing. Winter arrived in Seoul, and one evening they walked through the Mapo district together, past the cafe with Mr. Hwang visible through the lit window, past the street where her father used to park his bicycle, past the market where her mother bought the specific sesame oil she refused to replace with any other brand. Jaewon walked beside her and listened. He asked small questions. What did the bicycle look like? What song did her father play at the cultural events? She told him. She told him more than she had told most people in years, not because she had been keeping it, but because no one had asked. What does the Amharic word for home sound like? He asked. She said it, Gida. He repeated it, not perfectly. Again, she said. He said it again. She laughed, sudden and real and warm, the kind of laugh that fills a space and stays in it after the sound is gone. The cafe lights were behind them, and the city was moving around them, and it was cold, and she laughed, and it was the best sound either of them had heard in a very long time. Her mother was humming when they got home, the Ethiopian melody, old and faithful and surviving everything, coming softly through the wall. Tole sat at the table, opened the sketchbook to a fresh page. Jae-won sat beside her, reached over and adjusted the lamp angle so the light fell better across the paper. She let him. She didn't say anything. She just let him, and then she picked up her pencil and began to draw. Outside the window, Seoul glittered cold and full of light. Inside, something that had been buried under grief and survival and years of being the strong one was breathing again, quietly and without announcement, the way things grow when they finally have enough warmth. And if you made it to the end of this story, you already know it was never really about a wrong floor or a food delivery. It was about two people who had both learned to live without being fully seen, and what happened when they finally saw each other.